The third time her foot slammed into the back of my seat. I knew this flight was headed straight for disaster. Not turbulence. Not a mechanical issue. Just one furious passenger who had decided I was her personal target. And I had no idea how far she was willing to push things until flight crew finally stepped in. It was a long-haul flight, and I was already exhausted before we even reached cruising altitude. I boarded early, tucked my carry-on away, and settled in, fully expecting a quiet, forgettable journey. The woman behind me was middle-aged, sitting in the aisle seat, wearing sunglasses indoors, arms folded tight across her chest like she was gearing up for a fight. I noticed her, sure, but didn't think much of it. Flights are full of strangers, and most people just want to get through them unnoticed. The first kick felt accidental, a dull thud against my seat back, just strong enough to jolt me forward. I turned my head slightly, expecting an apologetic look or a quick sorry. Nothing. She stared straight ahead, lips pressed tight, acting like it never happened. I let it go. Maybe she stretched her legs. Then it happened again, harder. My tray table rattled. My drink wobbled. The guy next to me glanced over, confused. This time I turned fully around and met her eyes. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked irritated, like I'd personally wronged her by existing in front of her. Is there a problem? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She leaned back, scoffed, and said, "Your seat is too far back." I blinked. My seat wasn't even reclined yet. We were still climbing. I explained that calmly. She rolled her eyes so dramatically I thought they might get stuck and muttered something about selfish people under her breath. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. As soon as the seatbelt sign switched off, I reclined my seat a few inches. Not slammed, not aggressively, just normal airplane etiquette. The response was instant, a sharp, deliberate kick. My tray table lurched. "Hey," I said louder now. "Please don't do that." She snapped back. I paid for my space. You don't get to take it. Passengers around us started paying attention. You can feel when tension spreads down a row. People pretending not to look while absolutely listening to every word. I straightened my seat again, trying to de-escalate. My heart was already beating faster than it should have. For about 30 seconds, things were quiet. Then the kicking started again. Repeated. Aggressive. Like she was trying to send a message straight through my spine. Thump, thump, thump. I raised my hand and signaled for a flight attendant. When she arrived, I explained calmly what was happening. The woman behind me cut in immediately. She's invading my space. I told her to stop reclining. The attendant looked between us, then gently explained that reclining was allowed and that kicking seats wasn't acceptable. The woman laughed, actually laughed, and said, "We'll see about that." That was when it clicked. This wasn't about legroom. This wasn't about comfort. This was about control. As the attendant walked away, the kicks got worse. Stronger, faster, almost rhythmic. My seat shook with every impact. Anger bubbled up in my chest, mixed with embarrassment and disbelief. I wasn't doing anything wrong, yet I was being punished for it. People started whispering. Someone across the aisle shook their head. I felt trapped. Nowhere to go, nowhere to move, sealed inside a metal tube at 35,000 feet with someone who didn't care about rules or reason. I pressed the call button again, my fingers shaking this time. When the purser arrived, the atmosphere shifted instantly. He didn't smile. He didn't negotiate. He stood there silently as she kicked my seat one more time while I sat perfectly still. And that's when I knew the situation was about to turn in a way I hadn't expected. The purser said nothing at first. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as her foot slowly pulled away, like a child caught doing something they thought no one saw. The cabin had gone quiet, the kind of silence that only happens when everyone senses something serious unfolding. No chatter, no laughter, just a low hum of the engines and tension thick in the air. "Ma'am," he finally said, calm but firm, "may I speak with you?" She sighed dramatically, loud enough for half the cabin to hear, and leaned back as if she were the victim. "I've already explained," she said. She keeps reclining into my space. "I have bad knees. This isn't fair." The purser nodded slowly and told her to stop kicking the seat immediately. He explained airline policy, personal space, and basic passenger conduct. He even offered a compromise, suggesting I keep my seat upright during meals and overnight, something I was already doing. I agreed instantly. I just wanted it to stop. She didn't. The moment the purser shifted his attention toward me, she slammed her foot into my seat again, harder than before. The tray table snapped halfway down, and my water spilled straight into my lap. Gasps rippled through the nearby rows. "That's assault," someone muttered. The purser's expression hardened. No more patience. No more explanations. He turned back to her and said, "That behavior stops now." She crossed her arms and shot back. "Or what?" That question was her mistake. He instructed her to unbuckle and follow him to the galley. She refused, said she wasn't going anywhere, said she knew her rights, said she flew all the time and had never been treated like this. Her voice climbed higher with every sentence, feeding on the attention. Meanwhile, my nerves were shot. My back ached from bracing against every impact, and I sat there realizing this was no longer just an argument. It was a full-blown confrontation, and it wasn't over yet. The impact. My hands were clenched so tightly that my fingernails pressed painfully into my palms. I felt angry, yes, but even more than that, I felt diminished, like I was being humiliated in public with no way to escape it. The purser made a swift decision. He leaned down toward me and quietly asked if I would be willing to change seats. I nodded right away, relief washing over me so quickly it almost made me lightheaded. He told me to gather my things and come with him. As I stood, the woman erupted. "Oh, so she gets rewarded? This is unbelievable." She started it. Started it by sitting in a seat I paid for. Passengers were openly staring now. No one was pretending not to notice anymore. A man seated ahead turned around and said, "Ma'am, you've been kicking her seat the entire time." That only fueled her rage. As I stepped into the aisle, she slammed her seat back forward aggressively, as if reclaiming some imaginary territory. The purser guided me past her, positioning himself to block her view, and led me toward the front of the plane. But it didn't stop there. As we walked away, she shouted after us, "You think this is over? I'm filing a complaint. You'll regret this." The purser didn't answer. He seated me several rows ahead, in a better seat than the one I'd paid for, and told me to take a moment and breathe. My heart was still pounding so loudly I could hear in my ears. From my new seat, I could see down the aisle. I watched as the purser returned to her row. I saw him bend down and speak quietly. I watched her wave her hands wildly, pointing at my old seat like it was evidence in courtroom. Then I saw him do something I never expected. He reached down and adjusted her seat, not backward, but forward, locking it completely upright. She noticed immediately. "What are you doing?" she shouted. "I'm disabling your recline for the remainder of the flight," he said calmly, due to repeated aggressive behavior. The look on her face was total disbelief, mouth hanging open, eyes wide, like reality had slapped her harder than she'd been kicking my seat. And that's when she completely lost control. She jumped her feet, so fast her headphones flew off and clattered into the aisle. "You can't do that," she yelled. "That's illegal. I paid for the seat. I have a medical condition." The purser never raised his voice. He didn't argue. He simply repeated that her recline was now disabled for safety and passenger conduct reasons, and that any further disturbance would result in authorities meeting the plane upon landing. The word authorities hit the cabin like shattered glass. For a brief second, she looked frightened. Then she shifted tactics. She started crying loud, theatrical sobs, hands covering her face, rocking back and forth like she'd been wronged beyond measure. "I can't sit upright for hours," she wailed. "My back, my knees, you're torturing me." People shifted in their seats. Some glanced around, suddenly unsure who to believe. And then came the twist, quiet, sharp, undeniable. The purser calmly asked her to provide documentation for a claimed condition, explaining that passengers with medical accommodations were required to notify the airline ahead of time. Her crying stopped instantly, not gradually, but completely, like a switch had been flipped. She stared at him. I don't have it with me, she snapped. He nodded once. That's what I thought. He then explained, loud enough for nearby rows to hear, that the seat-locking mechanism was used only in extreme situations, and that repeatedly kicking another passenger's seat was classified as aggressive interference. He also stated that the crew had reviewed footage from the cabin's aisle cameras. Her face drained of color. She sat down slowly, suddenly aware of how many eyes were fixed on her. No more yelling. No more tears. Just silence and a rigid, upright seat she couldn't escape. The rest of the flight passed quietly, almost unnervingly so. I kept expecting another outburst, some final explosion, but it never happened. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even look up, just stared at the seat in front of her like it had personally betrayed her. When we landed, the purser returned to check on me. He apologized for the situation, for the stress, for how long it had taken to fully intervene. Then he said something that made everything fall into place. She wasn't upset about legroom, he told me quietly. She was upset because she couldn't control you. As we disembarked, I saw her again, standing off to the side, while two uniformed officers spoke with her. No tears this time, no anger, just frustration and embarrassment wrapped tightly around her like a coat she couldn't remove. I walked past without saying a word. For the first time since boarding, I felt light, not because I'd been moved forward, not because her recline was locked, but because someone had finally drawn a boundary she couldn't cross. And that's when I realized something I'll never forget. Sometimes the most satisfying ending is a revenge. It's watching someone lose the power they thought they had. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Every single subscription motivates me to bring you even more exciting and dramatic HOA stories. And don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. I'll see you in the next story, where justice is even more satisfying.